that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and the famous Tom Fennell. I didn't expect that. Anyway,
I'm not sure I did either. Well, let me get this out of the way before.
Oh, okay. You don't want people to think that you've got that in the way. Anyway,
I gotta have
every
my
day
rum.
I'm letting.
I gotta have my rum for breakfast.
I'm letting you have your what for breakfast?
Yo ho ho and a bottle
of
rum.
A bottle of rum. It's coffee. Anyway, every day I get up early and I look through the news for about 3 or 4 hours. I usually go through about 300, 250, 300, 350 news items looking for things that have to do with climate change and energy. I keep a blog, geoharvey.wordpress.com. And Tom and I go through the 20 or so pieces that are the most interesting, we think, from the week's news. I put up about 10 items a day, so 10 to 15. So I guess this is about 20% of what I find. But anyway, we will go through it one day at a time.
This is the best of the blog.
The best of the blog, starting on February 11th, which was last Thursday.
I got a headline for every one of these things.
A headline?
Yeah,
okay.
So why don't I read the headline and then hand it over to you?
Do it, absolutely. Let's do that.
Why Colorado requested a pause on a clean power plan but isn't taking it.
There you go.
Okay.
And
you have it now.
Opinion. By golly, Tom just read the headline, which is what I was going to read first, but that's okay. Colorado regulators say they will press forward on President Barack Obama's plan to curtail emissions from coal-fired power plants despite a temporary pause issued by the U.S. Supreme Court for the Clean Power Plan this week. This is from Colorado Public Radio.
Well, we'll be talking a bit about this on several of our items today.
Yeah, we will.
And it's a very important issue. I mean, this has world-shattering
Absolutely.
effects.
Let's show them a picture of the coal train as it enters Craig Station Power Plant near Craig, Colorado on Tuesday.
Ask and you shall receive.
And it'll, there it is.
There you go.
That's a train load of coal being delivered to the plant so it can be burned and make our eyes hurt. Okay.
You know, I took a couple of years back, about 10 years ago, I took a trip to the West Coast on Amtrak.
Yes.
And I was shocked that when we got out in the Dakotas and all of that, and it's nothing but miles and miles of straight track, that they shunted the passenger train to the side so the coal trains could go by.
Yes. Yeah.
They have priority.
You know, I'd like to go out to Seattle or something on a rail trip.
It's worth doing.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you're sleeping in a bunk, you know.
Yeah, I know.
But it's still kind of fun, and you meet nice people on a train. There's always somebody on a train.
And you can get up and walk around and
I enjoy
feel like you're seeing the countryside, which in fact you are.
Seattle and Portland are both worth seeing.
Yep.
They're nice towns.
I've been through on trains that went from Illinois to Kansas, and I'll tell you, you don't see a lot of hills on those. But it's still fun. Okay. Our next item.
There's a one takeaway here.
Yes.
They're talking about Colorado being about one of the 24 states that requested this stay in this lawsuit.
Right.
But they're not practicing it. They're getting ready.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. That's the thing.
We'll talk more about that.
Yeah,
but the reason for that here is they got a Democratic governor
and a Republican
attorney general, or vice versa.
It's Democratic governor.
And they're split on.
His name is Hickenlooper.
Okay.
So
I remember
the question I've got is, what do you do when your name is Hickenlooper? You become governor of Colorado. That's what you do.
But anyhow, that's the reason why they're split.
Anyway, that's why. But there's about 5 states that are doing that. Michigan is another.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting.
Our next item comes from the Minneapolis Star Tribune.
Yeah, low-cost energy storage for the power grid can be found in your basement.
In your basement.
The
Brattle Group study... A Brattle Group study says that America's 50 million residential...
The Brattle Group.
The Brattle Group, right.
Had nothing to do with Brattleboro.
No, it has nothing to do with Brattleboro. I wonder if it has anything to do with the Brattle Bookstore in Boston. But nevertheless...
Well, it's a consultant firm.
Yes.
And William Brattle was the guy who they named Brattleboro after.
Yes.
I guess he named it after himself.
That was very smart of him. Okay.
I don't think he ever set foot in Brattleboro.
Might be. 50 million residential electric water heaters can address bigger challenges such as storing energy from wind farms and solar arrays. The study examined smart technologies focused on water heaters, which use 9% of U.S. household electricity. This is from the Minneapolis Star
This is
Tribune.
interesting. There is an awful lot of electric hot water heaters being used.
Yes.
And there is smart technology that is available, but it isn't being used yet.
Yes.
In some places it is.
Yes.
But I mean, it's not universally available.
Right.
And what they're going to do, and they're not going to commandeer you a hot water heater. They're going to somehow compensate you for giving you the use of your hot water heater to store energy.
Yeah. And the energy...
It's a brilliant idea.
The energy that's being stored comes out supplying energy to your own household, because
first,
what they're doing is, the way this storage, what it means is, instead of supplying you with hot water when your household says, we'd like to
need
get
hot water.
a little hot water, which just means that a thermostat has reached a particular point, they will turn on the hot water heater at night or whenever
when they're generating turbine wind or something.
Yeah, and so if there's a lot of energy and there's no place to put it, they'll put it in your hot water heater, which means that they don't have to supply it later.
And the only real difference from what's going on now is they're going to, in order to participate in this, they're going to request that you get a very large hot water heater.
Hot water heater.
50-gallon tank.
50 gallons.
Yeah. Well, why not?
Why not? Our next item from Clean Technica says...
Global solar pipeline, PV pipeline, now exceeds 200 gigawatts.
Wow. A leading source of solar analysis. It is a lot. IHS published the latest edition of its Solar Deal Tracker this week, in which it finds the global solar PV pipeline has now exceeded 200 gigawatts, thanks in large part to the extension of the U.S. investment tax credit.
And what they mean in this case by the pipeline, by the way, is those plants that have been planned and are ready to start but haven't started construction yet.
Right.
They're in the pipeline to get built.
Right. And they go on to say, of the PV projects, the 200 gigawatts, 110 gigawatts are in the United States, China, and Brazil.
Those three countries. Just those three countries. They got as much as all the rest of the world combined.
Yeah. It's pretty impressive. A lot going on in Brazil. A lot going on in Latin America. A lot going on in Chile.
Yes.
So, anyway.
We have touched on that.
Our next item is...
To minimize wind power's impact on birds and bats, the Department of Energy can use the AWWI as a model.
This is
I think you're going to tell us what the AWWI is.
I refuse. Oh, yes, I will tell you. Natural Resources Defense Fund Council gave us this. The Audubon Society says climate change threatens over half of American bird species. One of them, by the way, is the Baltimore Oriole, and another one is the bald eagle, neither of which is currently is said to be at risk, but they're saying the bird species, 50% of them, the American Wind Wildlife Institute, AWWI, has studied ways to protect wildlife and can be used as a model. And you know, the Audubon Society, not the Audubon Society, sorry, it's the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds.
We've talked about that.
Installed a wind turbine at its headquarters in the UK.
We talked about exactly that.
We did indeed, and they did a study on that wind turbine to see what the disastrous results would be, and they determined that in fact the results would not be all that disastrous. Okay.
There is a takeaway here.
Nice picture of a bald
from this
eagle.
article.
Yeah.
The largest threat to birds, bats, and other wildlife is climate change, not wind power.
Yes, climate change.
So dangerous is climate change, in fact, that it endangers or threatens more than half of American bird species.
Right. Species. Whole species could go extinct because of climate change. And I've got a box in the middle of that thing. Better get rid of it. There we go. Okay.
We got another one here.
Or we have another thing coming up from Utility Dive.
China overtakes the EU to become global wind power leader.
Okay.
Let me get the picture up.
The picture, okay. China installed half of all new wind capacity worldwide last year, according to the Global Wind Energy Council. The country added an astonishing 30.5 gigawatts to boost installations to 145.1 gigawatts. It overtook the European Union, which added a record 6 gigawatts, so China's installation was 5 times.
And China's growing
5 times as fast. To increase its capacity to 141. So this is from The Guardian. They're saying China is just installing wind turbines as fast as they can, and it's starting to pull ahead of everybody else. And I'll point out,
if they keep going at this pace,
they're not going to have any need for coal.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they want. Those 145 gigawatts of wind probably have capacity factors that are somewhere around 35 or 40%, as opposed to their nuclear reactors, which probably have capacity factors of about 82, 83%. Mm-hmm. It's only in the United States.
So gigawatts versus gigawatts aren't necessarily...
No, they're not the same, but this is the equivalent of about 60 or 70 big nuclear reactors.
Well, that's a good way of getting this into perspective.
Yeah.
60 or 70
60 or 70 nuclear reactors. And last year they installed the equivalent of about 12 or 13. These are not the size of Vermont Yankee. They're bigger. They're bigger. These are big reactors. They're almost twice the size of Vermont Yankee. So there we go. And should we go on?
Yeah, this is a good article coming up.
Okay, good article coming up.
8 trends shaping the grid of the future. And I got the 8 trends.
Oh, do you really? Good, because I didn't write them down and I don't remember them. Utility Dive gave us this. Nearly 3/4 of major U.S. energy deals made in 2015 were for renewables assets, and nearly 3/4 of new generation capacity built in 2016 will be renewable, according to a new study released by Deloitte Center for Energy Solutions. And here are the 8 trends.
Well, the article went into these in great detail.
Yes.
It's very well worthwhile looking up and reading if you're interested.
Yep.
But the first one is renewables acquisition. The utilities are getting involved in renewables.
Yes.
Okay. Second one is community solar. They're getting involved in community solar where people are getting together to pool their resources and get solar.
Right.
People who live in apartments who say can't have an apartment on their roof.
Yep.
They can buy a piece of a solar farm.
Yeah. And you can do this in Vermont.
You can do this in Vermont right now.
Yeah, and a lot of other places too.
Now, integration of renewables. The utilities are integrating the renewables with their fossil fuel generation.
Right.
Using one to complement the other when one goes down.
Right.
And that's the next item too. It's just a different aspect of it. Leveraging renewables for grid resiliency.
Yes.
So when they need a little power over here, they turn on renewables over here.
And what happens is, and this is the experience in Germany, when they got up above 30% renewable power, they wound up having grid resiliency improve, which meant that
absolutely
they had the most reliable grid in Europe, and they cut down the number of minutes that the average consumer was down during the course of an average year by about a third.
Which is a very, very positive development.
It is indeed. And there's no reason why we can't do that.
Well, the next item is sort of on hold right now. It's the Clean Power Plan, and we'll be discussing that.
Yep.
It turns out it may not even be necessary.
Well, not only that, but various states are pushing ahead with it, even though the Supreme Court said they didn't have to.
We'll talk about that one too.
And that, I think, is much to their benefit, because they're going to be ahead of these other states that'll have to scramble.
Well, that's kind of why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item is regulatory reform. So they're going to be dealing with the state to change what they can do, and I don't remember too many of the details there. The next one is important. Corporations are buying renewables.
Yes, indeed.
Walmart. IKEA.
Yeah.
These companies have gone into it big. Google. They've gone into it big.
Apple, they're going into it.
And finally, and this is a biggie, finding and training the renewable energy workforce.
Yes.
Jobs.
And we've got a lot of, the job force for renewables is just growing and growing. So we'll see how that all turns out. You know, every time I see something like that, I think, well, this can't last forever. But for jobs in the renewable industry, it could last for well over 10 years.
Well, there's a takeaway here. It is getting very hard to ignore alternative energy now.
Yes.
There is not a hierarchy among these trends. They form a web of interest woven together by renewables, becoming a larger part of the U.S. generation strategy. It's a mouthful there, but it makes sense.
Yes. Okay, our next item is from Clean Technica. And this is on Saturday, February 13th.
Oh, this is an interesting
This is
picture.
Wild. Put the picture up, please, Tom.
I'm trying to. I gotta find
He'll get there.
Gotta find
really
the mouse.
quick. There you go.
There we go.
Opinion from Clean Technica. What is it? What's the opinion?
Is this the best solar chart yet?
Well, is it? Solar energy
Look at it. I mean, look at it.
It's been in a
Mirror
boom
image.
of late. One that arguably will continue for a long time. One might ask why the technology has found increasing footholds in the global marketplace. Well, the graph here puts it more succinctly than the author of the article could. So let's just look at it.
The price is going down.
And the installations are going up.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and what
they're
is
matching
happening?
each other.
They're matching each other. And you see that in the lower right-hand corner there in 2015.
Yeah.
It is 61 cents per watt.
Oh, yeah, when they started.
That's for the solar panel.
Yep.
The price of solar just keeps going down.
What is it now per watt?
Well, that's pretty close. It's, you know, I'm actually getting a quote for solar at the place where I live because
when they started this, it was $100 a watt.
It was $100
now it's
a
61
watt.
cents.
Now it's 61
this
cents.
This is to install it.
That's
this
right.
is not to pay for your watt going in.
And as a matter of fact, you know, if Real Goods, which is the solar installer, and they operate in Vermont, but all over the United States, the guy who started Real Goods was working in a place where everything was off-grid, but they didn't have off-grid power per se. It was just that they were all off-grid. This was back in the 60s. It was, I don't know what it was, but anyway, somebody, believe it or not, driving a Porsche, drove into town and stopped in and said, I've got solar panels. Would you like to buy? And he bought the entire load for about $65,000.
Can't fit very many solar panels in a Porsche.
They were
I bet he had a trailer.
They were like 9-watt panels. They were little bitty ones.
Little bitty guys, huh?
And they cost something like, I don't know, $500 each. You know, it's crazy what these things were back in the old days.
You're talking the 60s. Nobody even knew what they were.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this was back in the days when my first exposure to a computer, I was told that the memory in the computer cost $1 a bit. Well, the same kind of thing has happened, and for exactly the same reason. Solar panels are silicon. So anyway, should we continue?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
Can't dance.
Okay.
Let me.
And our next one is from Business Standard. In what?
This is the National Thermal Power Corporation of India, the biggest utility.
Right.
Takes big strides in renewable energy.
Yes.
They're moving along pretty quickly.
Yep. So the thing that I'm supposed to read says, in what could reflect a paradigm shift in power generation in India, for whatever that means, because I can't make any sense of it. Officials of the state-owned utility NTPC said one reason for low plant load factor at their thermal power stations is due to increased share of clean energy. The plant load factor has declined to 77.8% in 2015 from 79.3% in 2014 and 85% in 2012 to 13.
So this is basically what we've talked about in the previous article about the utilities getting into renewables.
That's right.
And in this particular case, they've observed that their loads are going, their
Absolutely.
generated loads are going down because they got the utility. By the way, the renewables in this particular case may not be owned by the utility.
Yes. You know, this is it is a paradigm shift. There's no question about it. And that declined from 85% in 2012 to 2013 to 77.8% in 15, we're talking about 2.5 years, and an increase in the non-fossil fuel energy of about 50%. This is big growth, but it's very threatening to people who are behind coal power plants and things of that nature.
Well, we've talked about them.
We have indeed. Okay.
Okay, the next guy is we've talked about this one. This is interesting.
Yep.
Southern California Gas stops leaking natural gas well near the Porter Ranch.
Yep.
Now, they haven't plugged it yet.
Right.
But they've stopped it.
That's an important distinction because they have stopped it, but it might start again.
Yes.
And the way they stopped it, as I understand it, is they dug a well to where the break was, thousands of feet underground.
Yep. And injected something into the pipe.
They relieved the pressure from the pipes and injected stuff in, and now they're going to put concrete into the pipe.
Well, this is their. They got to bury the whole damn thing in concrete.
This is a complete disaster. It's a complete disaster, and it tells you a
good
good reason why you shouldn't be doing things underground when you don't know what's underground. This was an empty oil well that had methane put in at a pressure of 2,700 pounds per square inch.
Just to store it. Now,
Just to store it.
2,700 pounds, that's more than you got in the tires of your car, isn't it?
A bit.
Like about 1,000 times.
Well, it's about
a couple
100
hundred
times. But it's a lot. And the thing that I've told people, it's about a quarter of the pressure of the chamber of a shotgun when it goes off.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, we'll see where that goes. That, by the way, came from CNN. I should read what this says. Infrared video taken confirmed that Southern California Gas Company has stopped the flow of natural gas from the leaking well near Los Angeles. It's actually not near Los Angeles, it's in Los Angeles.
It's in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's in the Porter Ranch neighborhood, which is a relatively well-off neighborhood. This is not poor people who are being attacked. And by the way, well over 10,000 people had to evacuate this.
Yeah, this article's talking about that. Thousands of relocated residents.
Yeah, and it took the company 2 weeks even to notify anybody of what was going on. These residents were getting sick. And the company says, we don't know what's going on.
We don't smell anything.
Yeah, we don't smell anything. Oh, well, let's get out of this one.
Yeah.
Okay, our next item has a beautiful picture.
Oh, this is a good picture.
This is a well-known picture. This is not new.
I thought it was a drawing. It's a photograph.
It's a photograph. It's a very well-known photograph. I don't know how many times I've seen that, but it was taken in 1936 in the Dust Bowl.
21st century U.S. Dust Bowl risk assessed.
Yeah.
So they're talking about maybe it's coming back.
Well, BBC said U.S. scientists have modeled how a 1930s-like Dust Bowl drought might impact agriculture today and found it would be just as damaging, but the research shows the effects to be very sensitive to temperature, meaning that potential losses could be far worse as climate change progresses.
And the Dust Bowl was a pretty bad phenomenon.
Oh, it was unbelievable. It was absolutely unbelievable.
Huge agricultural losses.
This is a picture of a farmer and his two sons, and I want to point out if that little hut over there looks like it's very short, too short for him to enter.
It's buried in
It's
sand.
because it's buried. And what it's buried in is dust that was blown onto this farm, and of course nothing's growing because everything's buried. Mm-hmm. And of course, where did that dust come from? It was the topsoil and other people's farms. And you know, this was it was a very, very destructive period. Not very many people today remember it. I don't, because I was born after that happened.
Little takeaway here.
Yeah.
The U.S. is the leading producer in the world for corn. That's not too surprising.
No.
With most of it grown in just Iowa, Minnesota, Nebraska, and Illinois.
Yep.
Well, we know that too.
Corn Belt.
It's most likely they will have to start growing other crops.
Yes.
Iowa could one day become the cotton state.
Yeah, it could. That's right.
And that came right out of this article.
Right.
Because the climate change is making Alabama no longer conducive to growing cotton.
Yes, things are changing, and we might as well get used to that because they're changing.
You can deny it all you want to, but reality takes precedence.
Yes. Okay, our next item comes from The Guardian.
Got a nice picture here.
Got a nice picture there. Look at
up
that.
here already.
Yes.
Have we reached the tipping point for investing in renewable energy?
Well, there's the question, and this, of course, was in The Guardian, as I just said. Between 2014 and 2015, New York City's biggest pension fund lost $135 million in fossil fuel holdings. Fossil fuel investments have cost 15 of Australia's top funds an estimated $5.6 billion. Profitable sustainability is coming of age.
Well, the article doesn't say much about Vermont, but they lost some money too.
Do you know how much?
No.
Well, you know, there's an argument going on between Peter Shumlin, the governor, and Beth Pierce, who's the treasurer. They're both Democrats. He wants to divest of all coal.
Yeah.
She wants to maintain sensible investments and not have her not divest just because of some kind of moral issue. And I wrote 2 articles for Green Energy Times, which is coming out in a couple of days.
You're pretty well versed in this.
Yeah, the coal index has gone down 98% since 2008.
Well, we've talked about that.
The oil and gas index has gone down 50%. There are projections that 1/3 of all publicly traded oil companies and gas companies will go bankrupt next year.
I think we talked about that too.
Unless the price of oil goes up a lot, and these swings in prices are not doing a lot of good for the world. There are countries that are in deep trouble, Venezuela being one of them.
Yes, they are hurting bad.
They are hurting bad.
And I've been listening to the public radio about what's going on in the Middle East with the Saudis and the Iranians and the Iraqis and the Russians, and they're all bargaining, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that.
Yeah, but you know, the thing that I find amazing about this is the price of oil is going up because they're talking about maintaining the current level of production.
Yeah.
And the current level of production
pretty high.
Is very, very high, and it's higher than we need.
Yep.
So what are we going to do? Because
We're going to put them in tankers and float them in New York Harbor.
Yes, well, they're already, New York Harbor is already floating full of tankers. We don't have room for the oil we've got in the United States.
No, we talked about that too.
There it is.
What's the name of that town in
Cushing, Oklahoma.
Cushing, Oklahoma,
the tanks are full. They don't know what to do with the oil. They're not 100% full, they're 85%, 87% full. But the problem is they don't want to go to 90% full, because if they allow themselves to do that, they increase dramatically the likelihood of a spill. So we'll see how far that goes.
None of this is good news, is it?
Well, you know, it's interesting to think that the price of oil going down is bad news, but it's having a very heavy effect on the market.
Unfortunately.
And
a little quick takeaway here.
Yeah.
As oil prices bottom out and fossil fuels no longer offer strong returns, that's what this article is all about.
Yes.
Investment dollars are starting to move to renewable energy, which is becoming increasingly viable. And the takeaway here is the once unthinkable has now become the unstoppable.
Yes, indeed. How do you like that?
That's a good nugget there.
It is indeed. Okay.
Okay, and we got another picture here.
Another picture coming up. Let's try this. What is that? That's a graph of earthquakes in Oklahoma.
And that is staggering.
It's staggering.
The line in red is projected to the end of the year, so it's not real, but it's based upon what has happened thus far this year.
Well, actually, no. The data for this came last year.
Yes, it is.
This is last year's data.
Yeah, this is a year-old data.
And the reason why it came up was because I needed something for actually it was with the article, I believe, but it was because of a 5.1 earthquake. What's the headline for this, Tom? It's from KSAL.
More earthquakes Sunday morning.
Wow.
These earthquakes that they're going to be talking about happened Saturday night, and they're saying there's more coming tomorrow.
Yep. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, 3 earthquakes were recorded along the Kansas-Oklahoma border just a day after a 5.1 magnitude earthquake shook the northwest of Oklahoma. The state's stronger and more frequent earthquakes have been linked to wastewater disposal associated with fracking. And what has happened?
Say that one again, because that's key.
It has been linked, and this is by professional geologists, to wastewater disposal associated with fracking. What happened in 2008? They started doing the fracking. What happened in 2009?
They
started getting the earthquakes. What happened in 2014? They recorded more earthquakes than they had in all previous recorded years.
Well, you can look at the graph.
There it is.
On the left, they never had earthquakes.
They 1.6 per year. I don't know what 0.6 of an earthquake is, but this this is earthquakes with a magnitude of greater than 3 point something, 3.1, and they're just happening and happening and happening, and they are in fact strong enough to break down chimneys and do other damage.
Yeah, they're starting to do damage, and people are starting to get worried.
And they're starting to sue.
And the people that are doing this are still saying, the state's saying you can't do it, and they're turning around saying we can.
Yep.
And I think you got it. See, people are going to start suing.
They are
suing. It's going to cost them a lot of money, and they will
That's
stop.
right. And who are they suing? Well, in many cases, they're suing companies that are going broke. And in some cases, they're suing companies that have already gone broke.
So they can win and they'll get nothing because there's nothing there.
That's true. That is true. So should we go on from there?
I think we should, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
EchoBusiness.com gave us this. Well, they weren't responsible for the
nice
barge,
here.
but they were.
I wonder why the barge isn't full, though.
Well, because if you filled it up, it would sink.
Probably.
They need to have a little freeboard on this thing.
I wouldn't figure they'd need that much freeboard.
Well,
why would they build it so big? But
I don't know.
knows?
I don't know. For waves, I guess. Go ahead.
Fossil fuels are now a bad bet, investors told. Didn't we just say that?
I think we've been saying this for months. Oh, dear. Okay. Echo Business is telling us investors in fossil fuels are being warned that they may risk losing their money because the markets for coal and liquefied natural gas are disappearing. In both cases, it is competition with renewables as their costs fall, principally wind and solar power, that is being blamed for the threat.
This is basically, I think, a European article because they use liquefied natural gas.
They do.
We export liquefied natural gas.
To them.
To them.
Yeah. But the thing is, India has had its coal import cut by 34%, and China has had its coal imports cut by 31%, and they're going to cut them more.
And they're doing okay.
They're doing, not only that,
it's not hurting them.
India, the Prime Minister of India, well, it wasn't the Prime Minister, it was the Energy Minister, said there's not a single power plant in India that doesn't have a full inventory of coal.
Yeah, we talked about that too.
And
they were all loaded.
It was only a year ago that they didn't have anywhere. They had like a 3-day supply.
Yeah.
And now they've got too much inventory. They have to cut their imports because their use is going down and their production has gone up. And so, that's where we are. Now, our next item, Digital Journal. This is a big one.
States forge ahead despite ruling on clean power. Yep. This is an elaboration of what we started off talking about.
That's right. The Supreme Court put a hold on the Clean Power Plan, but many states are engaged. Colorado, which fought the plan, New York, California, Virginia, and Washington, and at least a dozen more, there's 17 altogether, have pledged to continue work. They already started to come into compliance with the Clean Power Plan to combat global warming.
Some of these states buy this right off the bat.
Yep.
Some others are still protesting it, but they're playing it safe.
It's funny, Michigan is one of those.
Yeah.
And the governor of Michigan and Ohio, the governor of Ohio,
yeah,
John Kasich.
That's a big coal state.
Yeah, he signed a moratorium on the development of renewable power in Colorado a little over a year ago. And he was asked by legislators if he would allow that moratorium to be extended indefinitely, and he said, "I will veto any act that has that in it."
Really?
Yes.
That's an interesting guy.
Apparently, that's what he did. So we've got.
He's still running for president.
I believe he is.
Yeah, he is.
That's right.
He will be in the Vermont primary.
Yep, and he is. He's an interesting character.
He's not anywhere near as nutty as some of the rest of
Well,
those guys.
that is true.
I'm not going to mention any names because I can't. One of them's nuttier than the other one, but
how do you figure it out? I mean, not mention names. Why not mention Donald Trump? I mean, there's a nut job right from the get-go.
he's doing all. That's his trademark, really.
That is his trademark. That's right. He makes a lot of headway on things that he says that are offensive.
He is amusing. He is amusing. That's for sure.
Yes. Well, and there are people who we have. I think we have to think about what our values are.
This isn't part of what the energy thing we're talking about, but this is something he said just about 2 days ago because I saw a clip of him saying,
"Yeah,
if I'm president, we'll find out who really did 9/11."
Good.
I heard him say that.
I have told people Donald Trump is not qualified under the Constitution to be president of the United States.
Yeah.
He has to wait another 28 years before he tries.
He's old enough.
He's got to be 40 years old. Okay, should we go ahead and get away from this mess?
We're getting up to next Tuesday.
Okay.
The Oregon House passes a bill to phase out coal and double renewable energy.
Yep.
Well, that's Oregon.
Yep.
But let's get this picture up there.
Yep. KLCC.
Because this is installing solar panels in Oregon.
KLCC-FM Public Radio tells us the Oregon House approved a bill that would eliminate the use of coal power in Oregon by 2030 and double the state's renewable energy standard goal for 2040. The bill was passed with utility support under pressure as they were trying to head off ballot measures in the general election in November. And I want to point out there's a couple of really interesting things going on here. One of them is people brought up a ballot initiative and the utilities said, wait a minute, let's avoid that ballot initiative. It isn't what we want. And we're willing to bargain.
That's unusual.
Yeah. And so they bargained with environmentalists and a bunch of other people to come up with something that would make sense to them. Another thing is that picture that we just had. This is
Bring it back up.
the photo credit on this is the Department of Transportation in Oregon.
Oh.
I mean, these state agencies are doing things with solar power and things like that.
This picture reminds me of stuff I'm seeing right here in Brattleboro.
Yes.
Private industries, these are mostly businesses, are putting up their own solar.
Yep.
I mean, I'll drive by and that wasn't there last week. And it's solar panels.
This is one of the things that's very interesting about solar. And the old deal was if the nuclear people said we're going to build a plant, it's going to cost $1 billion, it's going to be there in 6 years. 6 years hence, they were saying we're still building this plant. It's going to cost $2 billion. It'll be done in 4 years. And when a solar organization says we're going to build a plant, we're going to sell the electricity for 6 cents per kilowatt hour, and it's going to be there in September. What generally happens is they were right on the money in terms of the cost of the electricity, but it's not there in September, it's there in August.
I'm driving by 142, the River Road, and Renault Brothers, the trucking firm. They just built a huge garage.
Okay.
And there's no walls, there's just a roof. And the roof is all solar panels.
Okay.
It's a storage space for their trucks, but the roof is all solar panels, and it's large. It's a good amount of solar panels there. Don't hear anybody even talking about it.
Well, we've been seeing these arrays going up in Vermont. One of the things that's very funny about Vermont solar is that the U.S. Energy Information Administration, which is part of the U.S. Department of Energy, keeps an inventory of how much solar is installed.
Really?
But for their purposes, they're not really interested in small installations. So they don't count the ones that are smaller for some purposes than 1 megawatt, and for other purposes than 5 megawatts, which means that for their purposes, when they're talking about solar power, Vermont doesn't have any. Okay.
Well, that's kind of I don't know what to say, but it's not accurate. That's for sure.
You don't have to go very far before you see solar panels. And I will admit, there are places where you see more. You know, Jason Cooper was telling me about landing in Newark and seeing solar panels all over the rooftops.
I bet. Well, if you are looking for them, they're all over a lot of rooftops right here in Brattleboro.
In Brattleboro, that's right.
I was driving by the Marlboro College Tech Center.
Yeah.
And they got solar panels on the lower roof. That's
yes.
Like a walkway roof.
Oh, yes. Right.
Now that's, to me, brand new. I just noticed
them. I hadn't known that they'd done it.
But I mean, you drive along and you see them. They're on this roof here. They're on that roof there.
Yes. And it's going to be more.
And these are all commercials that I'm talking about. We're not talking about household, but that's happening too.
Yep. Okay. We are still working. That Oregon item was from Tuesday, by the way. We're still working on Tuesday. From CNews Renewables.
UK's Flectricity. That's a company.
Yep.
Launches grid service to absorb excess wind power. Looks like they got a good idea.
Yeah. British demand response specialist Flectricity Limited.
What? It's Flexitricity.
Flexitricity Limited, sorry. It's just hard for me to say anything. Said National Grid has adopted its Footroom service, which can make use of excess wind power. The service will have industrial, commercial, and public sector sites paid to adjust generation or consumption on request, so wind farms need not shut down.
So they're trying to balance the load with the source.
That's right. And this is demand response.
Technology.
It's new technology. It's not super new. They've been doing this in Germany. It's the basis for a good part of the so-called virtual power plants that they've been putting together.
We got a picture here.
We could probably put is there a picture?
Yeah.
By golly, there is. That's the Whiteley Wind Farm in Scotland. That is the biggest wind farm in the UK.
Is it really?
It is indeed. Yeah, and if you look closely, just to the right of the center, at the bottom of the picture, you can see a fence, and the fact that that fence is near and those wind turbines is far gives you an idea of how big they are.
They're pretty big, aren't they?
They are big.
Yeah. Interesting point.
And
and they're probably grazing cattle underneath them.
Oh yeah, sheep more than likely
sheep,
in Scotland. Yeah, they probably are. They're not going to waste that land. But yeah, okay. Our next item is from Clean Technica.
GTM Research Report shows significant solar gain. Now, GTM Research is a company.
Yes.
I don't even remember what GTM means, but it doesn't matter.
And maybe that they don't remember.
That's the name of their company.
Anyway.
Well, anyhow.
GTM Research has released its latest solar report, which found that 20 U.S. states are at grid parity now, with 42 expected to reach that milestone by 2020. With a decline in the cost of solar PVs and increases in the retail electricity rates, the economics of home solar systems is becoming increasingly attractive.
What does grid parity mean?
Well, that means that when you go and you get solar power, it costs the same as grid power. Well, the problem is solar power is going down. Yeah, it's parity. Price of solar power is going down. Price of grid power is going up. And in fact, we have been at solar parity in Vermont for several years because of the incentives. But now we're hitting solar parity in the United States without the incentives.
Well, that's going to make a big difference.
It's going to make a big difference. It's already making a big difference. In fact, one of the items that came up today in the news, which is not in today's program, but it'll be next week, is that Peru got a bid on a large solar system, which was going to be 130 megawatts. Big system.
They're closer to the sun up there, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and they've got less air to filter out the sunlight. The bid that they got on a part of that system, and I don't remember how big the part was, but they got a bid from a big solar operation of 4.85 cents per kilowatt hour from solar without any incentives.
So it's less than a nickel.
Less than a nickel. Less than a good price for natural gas in the United States. Less than many. I mean,
much less than.
Not only is solar power the price coming down below natural gas, which it's already started to do in a big time in the United States and way below the cost of coal and nuclear, it is going below the cost of wind power. This is
and big
amazing.
wind's been cheap.
And big wind is cheap. So, we're seeing things change.
Technology marches on.
Technology marches on. That's right. Sorry, again.
Yeah, let's
I'm not going to make an excuse. I just can't talk.
Let's visit our buddy Scott Walker.
Scott Walker.
Yes, he's issued an order halting the Clean Power Plan implementation.
Wasn't that amazing? He actually issued an order telling them they can't work on it. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker issued an executive office order that prohibits state agencies or departments from developing plans to comply with a Clean Power Plan. Walker argued that the effects of the EPA's plan would fall heavily on coal-dependent manufacturing states like Wisconsin. I got news for you, Scott Walker. If you're depending on coal, you're depending on an industry that has already collapsed.
Yeah. Is this the same guy that issued an order to his employees that they couldn't talk about global warming?
I think he may be one of them, yes. We're not allowed to talk about science here. None of that. Okay.
Oh, well.
Should we ditch him and go to something
Yeah, I
new?
don't think there's enough of a takeaway there to revisit it.
Okay.
So
Our next item, this
here,
is Wednesday, February 17th. An opinion piece from Energy and Capital. Tell us, Tom, what it says. Yeah, it's kind of large. And I don't think that's the actual colors. I think they've made those blues a little bit darker than the actual.
No, they use Kodachrome.
Kodachrome, which has been taken away.
It's coming back.
Is it?
For that very reason. People like the blues. That's
Really?
exactly right, yeah.
Really?
Kodachrome is coming back, and the Super 8 movie camera is coming back.
Super 8?
Yep.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm not. Because it uses Kodachrome.
If I could just stop here for a second. There is a great movie everybody should see. It was the only movie I know of that was ever filmed in 8mm that won an Academy Award. And you can get the TV 1-hour special version of it.
What's the movie?
Kon-Tiki.
Kon-Tiki.
You can get it. That's right. Yeah.
I loved that movie.
Oh, I loved it. Oh, it's so good. Anyway, okay, so we're here at Energy and Capital, and we've got this thing, Clean Power Plan doesn't need a federal... Am I reading this, and are you supposed to?
Well, I got a second part of that.
Oh, okay.
So read that.
Okay, Clean Power Plan doesn't need a federal plan. Last week,
now I got it.
You got it, okay.
A hold on a Clean Power Plan won't stop states from reducing emissions. Now you got it again.
Oh, thank you. Last week, the Supreme Court put a stopper in the U.S. Clean Power Plan. From the get-go, the CPP was criticized for being unconstitutional and unnecessary. Well, barring the legal applications of the plan, at least one of those accusations may turn out to be true.
I got a takeaway on that.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening. Some of these states are now saying they don't need the CPP to bring about productive emissions cuts.
Yeah,
they don't even need it. You see, even the states that are opposing the federal plan had already begun preparing statewide emissions reduction plans that had been mandated by the CPP.
Yeah.
So they started working on it.
Yeah.
They're not going to stop.
Yeah, they're not going to stop working
and
on
many,
it.
even without the CPP, are likely to see those changes through.
Yeah.
And why? Because it makes some sense. It makes economic sense.
It makes economic sense. And, so the Clean Power Plan, in a sense, was obsolete when it was issued. Okay, our next item comes from biofuelsdigest.com, and this is an interesting one.
I got this separately from more than one source.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tad sent it to me.
Oh, did he?
To you.
Tad Montgomery,
Yeah.
yes. Well, he sends emails to people and tells them about good things.
Drop-in waste-based fuel emerges, competitive with $30 oil.
$30?
By the way, what does drop-in mean? I had to look it up. It means that they can deliver it to the gas stations in your... What do we want? We got another picture here?
No. I just wanted to get away from that picture.
Okay.
We don't need it anymore. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
They can deliver it to your local gas station without any changes in infrastructure.
So you can just pump it into your car and go driving.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So
it's still in its infancy right now.
Yep.
It's not out there available.
And
but boy,
I should point out, this is not the only one either. There's more than
not at
one.
all.
Go ahead.
They're expecting this is going to cost 69 cents a gallon.
Should I read?
That's at the pump.
Should I read what this says?
Please do.
Okay, in Germany and Portugal, a new drop-in biofuel process has emerged, which is cost competitive with $30 per barrel oil, according to its inventors. The process breaks even with crude oil on a 10-year amortization basis for CapEx. I am not going to explain that because
what you spend, what it costs.
Okay, Tom knows I don't. At roughly $20.30 per barrel of crude oil, assuming refining costs of $8.66 a barrel. This means big oil is never going to see its price go up a lot again.
Not if the competitors at $30
and,
a gallon.
You know, at $30 a barrel, BP said they've got to see the price of oil double or they're not going to be making any money.
Yeah.
So
this is, I read a little bit about this process, and it's really using agricultural waste.
Agricultural waste.
It converts lignin, cellulose, and hemicellulose, whatever that is. Sounds like it's got to be part of wood, which it is.
This is all of
They're
wood.
all wood polymers.
They're all wood polymers. They're
into
plastics.
a biogasoline, and they give the chemical compounds, and it doesn't really matter. From non-food agricultural wastes, including corn stover. I had to look that one up.
Corn stover is
the leaves and stalks of field crops.
Leaves and stalks.
And
now,
sugar cane bagasse,
yes,
which is what's left of sugar cane after they press the juice out of it.
That's right, which traditionally has been dumped into rivers and choked them up.
Well, they also
and killed all the wildlife.
Make electricity. They've been doing it.
They've
Cuba
burned
for
it,
years.
but you know, if you burn that stuff directly, you've got a sooty mess on your hands.
You do.
So you know, we're making a little progress here.
It's the old story. I mean, it's burning something to boil water to generate electricity.
Which is
not the best way to do it.
The best way to do it. No, and as a matter of fact, I am coming to the conclusion that even replacing gasoline with a renewable resource is not the best way to do it. It's better than pumping stuff out of the ground, but you know, I
talked about that too.
Yeah, I talk about this sort of thing with Tori Weekers, who's my landlady, and says, George, if you're going to use my name, you got to get it right. So I'm going to try to get it right. She objects to the idea of taking something away from the soil where it was grown. And if we're going to
That's a good point.
Yeah, and if we're going to
think about that, but that's a good point.
Yeah, she wants that soil to be maintained. We should be maintaining a lot of different things that we're not maintaining.
So they should turn this stuff into charcoal and use that as a soil remediator.
They could do that, yeah.
And it still get the power out of the gas.
Well, they can get some of the power out.
Yeah.
If you're turning lignin and hemicellulose and cellulose into, if you're turning all of that stuff into gasoline, you're basically using the cell walls, which is what's left of the wood, of the straw, of the whatever. You're using all of that to make fuel. But you could extract some of it and put the rest of it back into the soil, and the rest of it would include the minerals that are in there.
Absolutely.
So there are, and I don't think that Tori would be particularly upset at me for saying that this was her idea, but she's been pressing it on me, and I'm pretty impressed with the idea. I think it's a good idea. So should we move to the BBC?
Yeah. Oil falls despite Saudi-Russian output deal.
Yeah.
I've been hearing about this on the
it's been going on.
Radio.
It's on and on. The oil price is swinging, and the stock market is swinging for the same reason. Oil prices fell on Tuesday despite Saudi Arabia and Russia agreeing to freeze oil output at January levels if other producers follow suit. That's a big if, but
it's a very big if.
The announcement came after ministers from the two nations met in Doha, along with their counterparts from Venezuela and Qatar. Brent crude fell 2% to $32.77 a barrel. And you know,
so these guys are all getting together and they're saying, we got to do something.
The first thing that everybody should realize is this whole thing about oil is happening because somebody wants it to happen.
Yeah.
And this is not a conspiracy theory. This is what is actually happening. The Saudis a year and a half ago said, well, we're going to pump oil as fast as we can. And that was their decision.
And that's exactly what they've been
and
doing.
that's what they've been doing. And the market has since then been reacting to the fact that they were doing that. They were not responding to demand. They were creating non-demand. And they were doing it on purpose.
The way this thing says, Saudi Arabia and its OPEC allies in the Gulf have followed a strategy of raising production to protect market share.
Yeah.
Rather than prices.
Yeah.
But the prices are getting all screwed up like a second order consequence.
Yes, but you know, the part of the problem here is Russia has got to see the oil price
That's
double.
the wild card.
But they've got to see it double in order to make money.
To make money.
And what are they doing? They're pursuing, you know, all kinds of military stuff in the Ukraine and elsewhere, and it doesn't make sense. And by the way, not Boris Yeltsin, what's his name? Putin. Mr. Putin, I'm sorry, you don't make sense. Anyway, and I shouldn't say I'm sorry. I shouldn't apologize for it. You don't make sense. And I, you know, if he sends out some hitmen to get me with polonium, you'll know what happened. Okay.
Okay.
Should we go on?
This I guess is the last item.
It's the last item from
New
environment.
Governor's Pact.
Yeah.
Shows states will continue to lead the way on clean energy.
Yep, which was basically an elaboration of what we have been talking about before. This is from Environment America. A bipartisan group of 17 governors announced a new initiative by their states to advance clean energy, encourage clean transportation, and modernize energy infrastructure. The Governor's Accord, the Governor's Accord for New Energy Future follows a Supreme Court ruling last week to temporarily block the clean energy plan.
I wish I had a map to show which states they're talking about here.
California is, in some respects, as big as the rest of the country put together.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, you know, I feel sorry for places like West Virginia because they've got jobs in coal. They could move those jobs into renewable energy, and they're just not doing it.
No.
And the
They're
objection.
closing coal mines right and left. People are unemployed big time.
Absolutely.
People used to make really good bucks too.
Yeah. And if you think about, okay, what about putting wind turbines on the ridge lines in West Virginia? I know that there are people in Vermont who would say, no, you don't want to do that. What's happened to the ridge lines in West Virginia?
Them down to get coal.
They have torn them down. They have eliminated Arch Energy, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
They were
a biggie.
They were one of the big ones, and they have lost, their stock has lost well over 99% of its value. They went bankrupt. They tore down the mountaintops of hundreds of mountains in the Appalachians and dumped the stone from the top of those mountains into the valleys next to them.
Into the valleys.
So they destroyed,
are the streams.
Yeah, so they destroyed about many hundreds of miles, way over 1,000 miles of headwaters because they wanted to get coal. So they wrecked the countryside, they wrecked the mountains, they wrecked the streams, and then they got wrecked because they were in an industry.
There's no more coal left in these particular mountains. They got it all. I saw mountaintop removal 40 years ago, and I was disgusted then.
Yeah, well.
And it got much, much bigger and much more sophisticated since.
Yeah.
And much more widespread.
And those states have got a mess on their hands. I remember people complaining about what was happening to farmers in West Virginia from the coal companies when I was in middle school.
Wow.
You know, they were, and the deal was that these farmers had signed away their rights on property below the
land,
surface of the land.
Didn't think that gave the guy some right to come in there.
They were in terrible trouble during the Depression.
Yeah.
And people went in and said, just sign on the dotted line. We will give you some money. It will get you out of trouble. We may come back one day and say we're gonna get the coal out from under this. The problem was that the farmers didn't realize that what that meant was the surface of the land would be removed. Mm-hmm. Their farm would be removed. The houses and barns would be removed. And then everything below that was removed to get the coal. And that meant the waterways were removed, the springs were removed, the wells were removed. And then what you do is you dump the topsoil back on the land and say, we've restored it.
Oh, okay.
Well, things will get better.
Privatize the profits and socialize the costs.
That's right. Things will get better, and we have to say goodbye to everybody.
Well, it's about that time, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Let me see if I
so
can
we'll
find
say
a
goodbye.
picture of us.
How about, yeah, there you go.
There we go.
Yep. So
Goodbye,
we'll
everybody.
say goodbye. Come back again.
I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.